Hi friends, welcome back to Mule-4 series of learning videos. I am siva.thankamanee, an integration technical architect. In this video, we are going to see some simple steps to create an API in MuleSoft, and we are going to see in three different steps. First, we will create and deploy an API into the Cloud Hub, and we are also going to see when we can call API as a microservice. And also we are going to see how to configure an API through Autodiscovery. And we are going to finally apply some simple API policies. Let's get started. I have created a simple application in Mule-4 called Employee Demo API. I have created it through Employee RAML, which contains two resources. One is employees details with get method and the same with the post method. So this is a simple employee RAML which I have taken for demonstration purpose, and this has been imported into this API, and hence automatically Mule-4 created API kit router and the corresponding steps that are required to get this full-blown API. So if you want to know more about creating an API based on the RAML, there is a video which I have already created and I will link it below. You can please watch when you get time. But in this video, we are going to focus on how to create and deploy the API into the Cloud Hub. And then we are going to see how to apply policies. So I have already deployed this. This contains a simple method called employee details. And I can also show what's going to come as a result. So I have the JSON with the name, address, and message. By invoking get employee details through get method, we are going to get this JSON as a response. So I have already deployed this into the Mule Cloud Hub. Let's see how it works. So here is the employee demo API. I have created simply by right-clicking here and any point platform and deploy to Cloud Hub. So once you click, it's going to ask you for credentials. If you give it, it's automatically going to deploy it into the Cloud Hub. So that's how I have created it here. And we are going to see how to create API on top of this. So first let's understand in a simple term what's an API. So I have created a slide to explain how it works. So in MuleSoft, API Manager is completely different from Runtime Manager. So in the Runtime Manager, you have all the implementation that's required. For example, MuleFlow, which we have just deployed, is an implementation which is available under Runtime Manager. So now we are going to create an API which is kept separated from the Runtime Manager as a separate layer, which can be connected through some different policies, and it can be applied. So which will then be linked, the API will then be linked to its implementation. So we are going to see how to implement this through switch called API Autodiscovery. So why do we have, or why MuleSoft designed in such a way that you have Runtime Manager and API Manager separately? So it's very simple. So Runtime Manager contains all the functional requirements, and API Manager is going to take care of non-functional requirements. So the advantage of being separated, one as a Runtime Manager, one as an API Manager, is due to multiple reasons. Because when you want to apply non-functional requirements without impacting the actual implementation, you can do so by selecting multiple policies and adding and removing whenever the non-functional requirements come up. And at the same time, you can also scale separately the implementation either vertically or horizontally based on your user base or the volume of transactions, etc. Now let's create an actual API. So let's choose the menu API Manager, and we are going to choose create a new API, and we are going to call employee API, and asset type I'm going to choose HTTP API, and MuleSoft is going to give you some group ID, asset ID, version, API version by default, so you can leave it as is and continue. So it's creating an asset, and then we can choose basic endpoint. And I have already run this API, which gave this predetermined JSON. So let's copy that and then give it here. API instance label is optional. You can give employee API and save it. It's going to create an API. So you can note down there are some details available which is critical. So ID is important, which will be useful for us to link it with the actual implementation. And you also need the name of the API, which is employee API. So we have created, and the API is unregistered because in order to get it registered, we might need to do this actual link to this implementation to get it active. So what we have done so far is we have created an API separately, and we have created an implementation separately and then deployed it into the Cloud Hub. So the API is available in API Manager and the implementation is available in Runtime Manager. Now we are going to see how to link this API into its implementation via Autodiscovery. Let's see how to do that. So let's go to the global elements, and then we can create a global element called API Autodiscovery. So API Autodiscovery is automatically connecting the API to its implementation via API version and the name. So let's say OK. Though API ID is being asked for, let's copy this ID. And we need to give the flow name. Let's go to employee XML, and then let's copy the flow name. Let's choose the flow. Where is it? Here is the flow name. Let's copy this. Let's go to API Autodiscovery and put it in the flow name. So now we have created an Autodiscovery configuration that indicates the API ID and the flow name. So when this API is invoked separately, and it's going to call the corresponding implementation. Now I'm going to simply check if the Autodiscovery option is correctly linked to the flow that we have in our Mule application. So I'm going to delete one of the characters and see what happens. So it's going to automatically indicate to us that it's an incorrect flow name. So this is one of the ways to verify the flow name. So we are done, and now we are going to deploy this back along with these Autodiscovery option. So one thing what you can do is, you don't need to do it once API is created, but you can do it beforehand, and instead of giving actual hard-coded values, you can give properties, and then you can go back and then to the application, you can go to the property console, and you can have this configurable. So once you create an API, you can just put this values directly into the configuration and then restart the app. That's one of the simple ways to do it. But here I am doing it step by step so that you can understand easily just by looking at it, so that nothing is hidden in the property file. That's why I'm hard coding. But please remember, hard coding this into API discovery is not the best practice. You need to always make it configurable via property files. Now it is all set, and the API is still unregistered. So we are going to deploy this API along with the Autodiscovery configurations. Let's do that. Right click, Unified Platform, and deploy to Cloud Hub. I'm going to pause the video until the app is deployed into the API Manager. So now we are going to deploy the application, and it's already there, and I'm going to overwrite it. It's going to take some time, and I'm going to pause this video until then. and I'm going to close the window, and let's go back to the API console. You can see here it's updating now. Now you can see the application is started up. So it should get our API active. We are going to see that. So before that, you need to note down one important step which I have not covered in this video because of this client ID and secret, which is which shouldn't be publicly visible. So click here and go to settings, and then click on the properties, where you need to have two important properties for your API to be automatically detected. They are these two. One is anypoint.platform.clientID and another one is anypoint.platform.clientSecret. So this is specific to your organization. If you want to get this client ID and secret, you can click here and you can click on the business groups and you will get the organization. By clicking that, you will get the dialog window where you will see client ID and secret. You can securely copy it and then put it under the properties. So there is a way to secure that property so that none of the external developers or release engineer will not be able to see that. So let's go to the API and then see whether it is activated successfully or not. Click on the API manager. And you can see here employee API is become active. This is because we have linked through 4 parameters. One is let's click here. So we have activated through this client ID for the particular organization, which is identified by our client ID and secret for the org ID. And then by clicking this ID, we have linked it through the corresponding flow by means of API Autodiscovery configuration, which we have seen. So after that, we have configured the org client ID and secret in the properties and deployed along with the API Autodiscovery configuration. So now we got this employee API active. So what does it signify? Now our API is qualified enough to add non-functional requirements like policies. So let's go to the policies. So now you can control without touching the actual implementation on this API layer and apply different policies. One policy I have already applied. So I have enforced the API access by means of client ID and secret. So which is mandatory. Otherwise only the customers who knows these client ID and corresponding secret will be able to invoke this API. So by clicking this apply new policy, you can click on this client ID enforcement and then configure policy, then it will be added. So we are going to see in another video about these different policies and use, and then also we are going to see when to use which policies, etc. And we will also be seeing further on how to view that in Exchange. You can see here the employee API is available in Exchange. We are going to see what an Exchange is, how to publish, and then how as an external customer I can come here, try to use it by requesting access. So that we are going to see the video that I am going to publish in another 2 days. So now finally let's cover one aspect. So when do we call this particular API as a microservice? So what makes the difference between an API and the microservice? So it's very simple. So microservice the term microservice is conceptual. So where if you can see here at the RAML, let's go to the RAML. And here we used only one piece of atomic transaction that's defined as an API, because we are not mixing with any other functionalities with this. So it's only about viewing employee details or creating new employee details by post. So what just these two configured as a separate API, and we have deployed it under the runtime manager. Let's see here. So this is deployed as one unit. You can see here it's one worker and 0.2 vCores. I have explained what is this worker and worker size in a different video which you can refer. So since this API is containing only employee operations as an atomic unit into this API, you can very well call this as a microservice, because this functionality can be individually scaled here separately, and they can be individually dealt with the non-functional requirements by simply dealing with that API policy without mixing this up into some other functionalities. Say for example, you want to maintain department separately, department API. Then by updating this employee API, you don't have any impact on the department API. Suppose imagine you have a RAML where you have added three more or four more resources for department as well. Then at that time you are trying to mix up employees with the department, which you won't call it as microservice, because then you will call it simply as an API which is used to manage employees as well as department. So when you want to update department, you are physically touching the RAML and the functionalities where employee details are available. So thereby you need to test when you change one functionality, you need to test the other. So thereby you can't individually scale and maintain the non-functional requirements such as policies. So in this case, it's simply an API and not microservice. So that's it in this video, and hope you have enjoyed and you liked this video. If you felt so, please like my video and subscribe my videos. And I'll come up with a part 2 for dealing with the exchange and consuming this API as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye.